Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're at Santa Clarita Elks Lodge 2379. We're having a reunion of 5 of the 12 charter members that are remaining of our lodge. And I think they're having their own private meeting, so I don't, we'll let them just do what they want to do because they haven't seen each other for a long, long time. First of all, let me go by and introduce the gentleman that we have with us tonight. Now, gentlemen, I hate to interrupt you. Yes, I hope
that's me.
I hope you will get your name straight. This would be good. Okay. Now, you're entitled to if you want to. Okay, first of all, we've got Bob Tallent right here. Bob, it's very good to see you. You were sort of a mysterious charter member for me for a while.
No.
Bruce Fortine, charter member. Bob Gill, charter member. Bob, what is your number?
3.
Number 3. He wanted to go for 1, but I think Gail beat him to it. Is that right? Okay. And Bob is the remaining officer of the initial group of officers of our lodge. Now we got this nice southern gentleman right here, Nathan Beverly. Yes, sir, I know who you are. Okay, good. Right. And here, my good buddy, Jim Williams. Now, what we've got right here. Now we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago at which we were honored to have Bob Gill with us, and that led to such an interesting discussion that we decided we needed to have another meeting, and maybe even more than one, because there's a lot of history. It's not every day a lodge reaches 50 years. November 15, 1967 is the key date, and here we are 50 years later, and we're fortunate to have these gentlemen with us tonight. Now, I will mention a couple of other things, just in passing, in our 50th anniversary, birthday, whatever you want to call it. First of all, there are commemorative glasses, shirts, hats, you name it, out in our treasure chest in the lounge room. Secondly, on September 9th, unless it's the 7th, that Saturday night, Mr. Inconspicuous right here, Jay Larkins, to his great chagrin, I will say, and probably embarrassment, we don't know yet, will be roasted here at this lodge. Already people are lining up and bribing me, paying me enormous sums of money to be able to roast Jay. Oh, it's going to be great. And then we have in November 18th, our big celebratory dinner. That is going to be a great big dinner, lots of fun, lots of good stuff, lots of good stories, lots of good memories. So please mark your calendar with those 2 dates. Now, I want to thank SCV-TV for being here tonight. They are videoing this for posterity, probably maybe even some blackmail opportunities. I'm not sure. We won't know yet until later. I do have this to announce as well. SCV-TV has graciously agreed to provide us with a video of other roasters that would not be on the program, but other roasters, again, to Jay's great chagrin, that will be played that night of the roast. Oh, that's going to be just fun. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, now, without further ado, what we want to do is just have a discussion with our gentlemen. We have one mic, so we'll pass it back and forth. And we've got Charlie here, Chuck, who's our historian. We've got Phyllis working on PR. We've got Grace. We've got Patty, whose husband was an early member and got lots of memories and stories. And I think what we want to do, Grace, do you want to introduce anybody tonight at this point? What? Just do it from there if you can. If you can, okay.
I'd like to introduce Jeannie Sutton and Martha Michael from the Gazette.
From the Gazette. Very good. Welcome, ladies. Welcome. Thank you. And Phyllis Walker, you're also working on PR. Do you have anything you want to say or add or throw in at this point? Okay, we do have an article coming up in the July-August issue of the Magazine of Santa Clarita thanks to Phyllis. So we are going to be getting a lot of visibility for our 50th year, and I thank everybody on the committee who's been working so hard to help us make all of this possible. Now, let us hear from our gentlemen. We promised them they would not be here later than dawn tomorrow. I hope that's fine with everybody. Bob, I think what I'll do is I'm going to hand the microphone to you. It's on, obviously. And go ahead, Phyllis. Yes.
We do have Bill Reynolds in the back from the signal.
Well, Bill Reynolds, for crying out loud. Okay. And Bill is also a key mover on the Veterans Memorial Project. So, good to have you, Bill. Thank you.
And a member here.
I'm sorry?
And a member here.
And a member here, yes. Well, as is Phyllis, as is Grace. Okay, now, whoever wants to start can ask a question, and then we'll get these gentlemen talking. Now, they may talk among themselves, too, which is fine, because I understand there's a few stories that may come out tonight that haven't maybe been told in many years. That will be good. Okay, Bob, the mic is yours.
Well, where do we start?
In the beginning.
In 1966, past District Deputy Grand Exalted Ruler Ralph Sussmark and Gail Dillenbeck got a hold of me. My home lodge was Santa Monica. And at that time, this little community was really growing out here. And they said, it's about time that we have an Elks Lodge out here. So I met with them. The first time they met at my house, and then the second time we met at Charlie Dillenbeck's house. And we more or less set up a corps of officers that would come in. And at first I didn't want to leave my Santa Monica lodge, but I said, yeah, I come out here. So the beginning of the lodge was really rough. We had a tough time making ends meet, but we hung together as a bunch of lodge members, and we made it happen. And this building here was another thing that we fought for it, but we had some people that was fighting for us in the county that was able to make arrangements where we were able to get this building. Now, the story on this building is it used to be the Mint Canyon Community Center. The Lions Club and the Mint Canyon Homeowners Association and several other associations used to meet here. Well, when we put in a bid for this building, we had a lot of people that didn't want us to get it. But a gentleman by the name of Frank Collins, who had influence, Frank Collins had a little bit of influence down in the county, and he was able to pave the way. Now, the county wanted this building because they wanted to tear out that wall there, and they wanted to make it where it was an opening where they could drive their trucks in here for maintenance and everything. But fortunately, we were able to get it through a few strings and a couple of really dedicated real estate men, and we were able to get it. Cheryl.
Bob, can I ask a question? Now, you were a member in Santa Monica. Were you living in Santa Monica and then coming up?
Oh,
here?
no, I lived up here.
You lived up here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why did you and Bruce share a kind of a laugh just now about the gentleman from lots of laughs.
I won't go into Frank Collins. I'll leave that alone, people. It was like a question that I was asked last Tuesday about some other things that went on in the lodge, and I had to decline that too. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of dedicated people. We put in a lot of man hours, and there was a lot of vacation time that I took to be active up here. Now, as far as the stories go, there's just beaucoup. And Jay and I were talking, and one of the most memorable things that happened, we were very close to Huntington Beach Lodge. They would come up here, we would go down there. So one night, we all went down to their lodge. We put a pig in the bottom of a bus, and we took it down there. So after they finished their meeting, while we presented their exalted ruler with a pig, here he was dressed in his tux. Now that pig had rode from up here all the way down to Huntington Beach. Needless to say, no sooner than they presented the pig to the exalted ruler, the pig let loose, and our lodge bought him a brand new tuxedo.
That can't be topped.
On meeting nights, it was always packed. We always had a lot of fun. And one of the things that happened in a meeting night, one of the officers would always bring in a gag gift, and they would sell raffle tickets for it. So when it came my turn, how many people remember East Side Brewery in L.A.? Not too many. Okay, East Side had a brew that was called Brew 102. Now, the reason they named it 102 is because there was 102 headaches in every six-pack. My wife wrapped that six-pack up, and that was one of the raffle gifts. That six-pack of 102 probably raised about $75 for the lodge. But there were just many, many things that happened within the lodge, a lot of fun things. Everybody was getting fined for something. And it was a fun thing. Jay is laughing. But I'll let one of these other gentlemen take over. And
Go ahead, share the mic, and let's hear from the other gentleman, yes.
Well, thank you all for coming, and good night. Well, to be honest with you, I don't remember anything. I was only 3 years old, and these were all old guys. My mentor at that time was Bill Benelli, and Bill, the family owned Saugus Speedway and the water company and the Benelli truck and all that stuff.
Sir, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I need your name. Your name? I can't see that.
Tonight, I'm Bruce Fortine. Okay.
I better check my name tag.
At the same time that the lodge was formed, we were also starting College of the Canyons. And that was a big time when the community really had a choice. And, on the ballot, it was, do you want to form a junior college district? Yes or no? 92%, yes. And then elect 5 people to serve on the original board of trustees. We had 72 people run for the board. And at that time, that was the record in Los Angeles County, and that stayed until LA Community College came along with 128, which included Jerry Brown. It was a great time for us. Yes, Cheryl?
72 candidates for how many spots?
5, yeah. And there were 5 people elected. Bill Benelli, Peter Hunsinger, Edward Muhl, Sheila Dyer, and me. And that was the most incredible board you could ask for. Those people were fantastic. A quick story, Edward Muhl was my pal. He was, I don't know how old Ed was, but he was up there. And I knew him as Ed, the guy that had a ranch in Bouquet Canyon, and he'd run his tractor every weekend and plow the fields. So he was just Ed to me. So one day he said, hey, you want to come down to my office and we'll go over the agenda for next week's meeting? I said, sure, okay. Where do you work? He said, well, I'm at Universal Studios. I said, okay. So, I drove down to Universal Studios and pulled up to the guard shack, and I said, I'm here to see a man named Edward Muhl. And the guard said, that's his building right there. So I said, His building? Mm-hmm. Okay, park over there. So I went in, and his office was about the size of the room. And I found out, he said, "We want to go to lunch in the commissary?" I said, "Sure." So we went to lunch in the commissary, and as we went in, he talked to the lady at the cashier's thing, and, he seemed to know a lot of people. So we're sitting there talking, and I see him look over my shoulder. And this guy came up behind me, and he said, "Paul, I want you to meet Mr. Fortine. We serve on the College of the Canyons Board of Trustees." It was Paul Newman. So, I found out that Mr. Edward Muhl had started with Carl Limley in the mailroom at Universal Studios. And when I met him, he was the number 2 man at Universal. So every movie of that era would say, Edward Muhl in charge of production. And he was also the head of the legal department, and he was not an attorney. He's just one heck of a sharp guy. So that gives you an idea of the kind of folks that we were dealing with here in our community. And from there, the College of Canyons was born, and thanks to the guys in the Elks Lodge, they were so helpful. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask you gentlemen how long it's been since you've all been together. Would there have been a meeting or maybe even a Christmas party or something in the last 40 years, or?
I was only 3, so I don't remember.
Well, my name is Bob Tallent, and I'm really sorry that I can't expound on a lot of the workings of the lodge and the experiences that I had. I got out of the service in '66, and the Navy wasn't paying very well at that time. And at the end of '66, in November of '66, I went into my first business in Palmdale. And at that time, the stats on that was 7 out of 10 service stations that I was in went out of business, went bankrupt. And I worked from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, 7 days a week. And I had 2 days off the whole year, and that was on Christmas and New Year's. Okay, and the big thing was after I went into the business, it was pretty tough. And I really didn't have too much time at that time to dedicate to the lodge. I was working all the time. And I heard Charlie Dillon Beck and Frank Collins' name mentioned, and I don't know whether any of you remember, but they had the market down here at Solomon Junction, and Charlie was the meat cutter. He did all the meat cutting, and Frank did the rest of the stuff. And anyway, it was quite an interesting deal with Frank Collins, as involved as he got in promoting business and stuff out here in this area. And he used to be pretty tight with the city council downtown. And he was very active in that. And I really have a lot of good memories from what really transpired up here in this area, because I saw it go from almost nothing to a metropolis darn near, and it's still growing.
Bob, how did you happen to become a charter member?
Pardon?
How did you happen to become a charter member?
I can't remember his name right now, But we met somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but anyway, we met and we started talking about the Elks. He started talking about the Elks. So I said, well, I've heard a little bit about the Elks. And he says, maybe you'd like to be a member. I said, well, that's not a bad idea. So anyway, I took him up on it. And I joined, and I have no regrets. It's very good.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. Okay.
When I was in high school, my goal was to be a service station attendant in Bob's gas station. And now I am.
Well, another funny story time. How many people remember Tex Williams? Tex Williams was a member of the lodge, and Tex Williams was a wild turkey drinker. That was the only drink to drink. Yeah. Well, Bob Horseman and I were the bar managers. I kept telling Bob Horseman, I said, Tex keeps coming in here and he keeps telling everybody that wild turkey is the only drink to drink. Well, at the time, Kessler was the bar whiskey that we used, bourbon. So I said, let me show you something. So I grabbed an empty wild turkey bottle, poured Kessler in it. Tex came in. I said, Tex, let me give you a drink. Oh, yeah. And he reared back and took his hat like this. He said, I'll take that drink. So I poured this Kessler in there, and he done like that. Now, that's a drink, ladies and gentlemen. Bob Horseman looked at me, and he just shook his head. He said, I can't believe it. I said, well, put it away. I said, Tex, that one was on the house. So we put it away. From then on, we gave him his wild turkey. He had to have it.
Bob, do you remember the jeweler that was their manager? Because they used to travel with him all the time. He was a jeweler over in Newhall.
Yeah, at 81, you know what happens, people.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
What was it?
Let's hear from me.
Yep.
Hi, folks. Enjoyed being here. Thank you a lot. I'm just a young fella. I joined the Elks in 1965 at San Fernando Lodge, and went down there. And the guy asked me to join. I was going to church, and everything, and I didn't know what the Elks was like. I said, "Oh," he said, "Come down and we'll let you introduce you to the Elks." So I went down, and so he introduced me to the Elks, and so I became a member in 1965. So the San Fernando Lodge was a big lodge at that time. There was a lot of people there, and they would have dances there, and they would have the name bands. A lot of the bands I don't remember, like Harry James. Some the big dances, and my wife and I just liked to dance, so we would go to and when you buy a steak, you get a big steak, $5. So that was a good days in those here, and I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of friends down there.
So Nate, how did you happen to become a charter member here then? Because were you living up here or were you down there?
Well, I'll get around to that. I'll get around to that. So I said I was a member. I joined in about 65 or 66, and I came to Newhall, California in 1962. So this fellow here said they wanted to get a lodge, you know, just area was growing. And so I got a notice from, I don't know, I think it was probably from Newhall or somewhere, or it was probably the San Fernando Lodge saying that I moved here in 1962, Placerita Canyon. And so they said, come down and we want you to join the lodge here, to meet down here. So, and I was just a young fella. I was only 27 years old, my goodness. I didn't know what was going on, you know? So anyway, they said, I got some of the members here. I don't even remember the fellow's name. He was mentioned, one that had a grocery store down there. Dillenbeck. So anyway, they were all, the first meeting that I went to was a barber shop there, right at on Railroad Avenue. You know, there was a barber shop. And so I went there, and it was about 5 or 6 members. Any of you guys were in that?
No, I was, first time I went was, we were at, I think Hart Auditorium, was it?
Oh, no, that was when, that was back in '67. But anyway,
We were farming.
yeah, forming. So, in other words, to start a lodge, you had to have 150-some members. 150-some members. I think you guys remember that? You, we were at the San Fernando, we were at the new Hart High Auditorium. Were you all there?
I was,
See, you were there.
I was there, yeah.
So we were all at the Hart High Auditorium, but you had to have 150-some members, paid members. So anyway, getting back to the San Fernando Lodge, he told me to come down and join the lodge, and they had a big hall that they put you in, and you walk around, and I was, what they going to do to me, you know? so what I would walk around, and they would say, bah, 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 you know. I said, what is going on here? And they were making all kinds of noise. But that's where they initiated you.
Oh, my.
But that would make noise, you know. But that was San Fernando Lodge. That was a long time ago, and they had it was a lot of people there. I think they had probably a couple hundred people in that lodge or more. So anyway, getting back to Newhall, we lived in Newhall. I bought my house in 1962 on Placerita Canyon. My house now, when I bought it, was what you pay for automobiles today. You know, it was very cheap. But you know what I was making? I was only making about $2 an hour.
Times have changed, huh?
Oh, time has changed. You know, if you make $3 an hour in the middle '60s, you're making a lot of money. You go to a grocery store and buy groceries, you fill up a car with $100. So, you know, things have changed a lot. But anyway, that scared me to death, you know, the people at that lodge. So I didn't have to making all that noise. But did they? But when you fellows here was demented, didn't they have the bad, they made noises and stuff when you were demented, or when you joined?
Remember that.
Initiated.
I was initiated in a different lodge.
Well, I mean,
And, I'll tell you about that
oh,
soon.
but they made a lot of noise, you know, and we walked around and everything, and so it was I was only 27 years old.
And poor Bruce was only 3.
Another guy lied about his age. Huh?
I was 27 years old. I was just a youngster. And I got married in 1954. I was in the service for 4 years, Air Force. And I met my wife in Boise, Idaho. And we danced ourselves to the altar. we really enjoyed. So that was one reason why I went to the lodge there, because they had a big name bands there. Sure. And also, back in those days, the band leaders, they have a lot of your band name leaders, they were being paid a lot to go to Boise, Idaho. And we went dancing together, and my wife. And so I met her in 1953 when I met her. And we danced a lot with Valentine's. And we danced there, and they used to come to the USO down there and dance, and we danced down there. And so that's how I met her.
I remember seeing you and Shirley May here many times dancing, and she did like her music, didn't she?
Oh yeah, we danced a lot.
She used to like to babysit children also at our camper clubs.
Oh yeah, we danced ourselves to the altar. Do you remember one time when we came here? We came here one time at the Elks, and it was Halloween. I was dressed up like a hobo, and we danced, and we won. And we gave us some steaks. You know, you remember that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we won quite a few little dance contests, because I enjoyed dance with her. And bless her heart now, she's got cancer. Yes, she's on hospice. And so you know how old she is? 85 years old. How you think how old I am?
Similar.
No, I'm 84 years old.
Wow.
84 years old.
I tell you what, you guys are holding up darn well. This is all I can say. You're looking good.
So my health is pretty good. But she's got cancer, and she's been on hospice since let's see, it was September of this year, and she was taking chemo, and when she was taking chemo, blood cells, you know, red and white blood cells would get, and she was very weak. And so they would give her a blood transfusion, and they would give her 2 blood transfusions the last time, and the doctor told us that we're not going to give you any more, we're just going to put you on hospice. So the thing is with cancer can stay there in your system a long time, but if it spreads, you say goodbye. And Shirley May has, she got cancer in 2005, and then she was taking that chemo, and she got a mission for 2 years, and then it came back again. Now she's on cancer again. She weighs 102 pounds, bless her heart. And we've been married 63 years. 63 years. I clap myself too. But we danced ourselves, and she was a good dancer. We went to Boise, Idaho, and then the USO in Boise. She was in the girls, the USO girls that come down and bus in Mountain Home Air Force Base. And when I met her there, and so one thing about it, she was a teacher in Boise, Idaho. And she was a music teacher. And bless her heart, she liked to sing and danced and everything. And one of the boys, some of the boys in my outfit, they call me Bev, you know, for Beverly. They call me Bev. And he says, "You like that girl, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." "You like her because she's got a 1948 Buick convertible." I says, "That's not true."
Was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But I mean, it was nice. But I really enjoyed it, and we danced a lot, and so that's.
Hey, let's hear from Jim. I think he's got some good stories too. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here tonight. I know it was not an easy thing to do. Thank you.
I don't know if I can top the stories. They're pretty doggone good, you know. Right here, he knows everything. I was a charter member here, and the only charter member we know about that's he's not here was Buzz, and Buzz would, when I worked with him in bingo, would say, "Hey, Jim, you remember when so-and-so?" And I didn't until he mentioned it, you know. I couldn't remember all that stuff, but Buzz remembered every minute of the Elks, and he'd remind me of it and this and that. But it seems to be an interest in how people got to be an elk. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I moved there with my family in 1929, and the nearest town was Van Nuys, and the driving forces in the valley were the American Legion and the Elks Lodge in San Fernando. And a little background on that, until 1956, you could only have one Elks Lodge within a city. And most of the San Fernando Valley was part of the LA city. So the people in Van Nuys, Reseda, wherever, belonged to the San Fernando Lodge. And in 1956, they changed the law so that on a population basis, you could have more Elks Lodge. And I had a friend that was the friend of the first ER down in Van Nuys who asked me to join the Elks, and I was happy to because all the time I grew up, they had been a service organization in the community I grew up in. I really didn't know much about that except the Elks and the American Legion did all these things. And I became a charter member of what was 2028 in Van Nuys later on. And then our initiation was a little over 1,000 people. It was such that we had to have our initiation, our swearing in, at the Devonshire Downs, which was a place at the end of where Cal Northridge is. And we filled the stands. And of course, we were up in the stands, and I had close friends that were initiated the same time I did. I didn't even know it. There were so many of them. One of them lives over in Laughlin right now, and we didn't know until 10 years ago that we were initiated.
Jim, where was this at?
Van Nuys. It was Van Nuys Lodge 2028.
Where at?
Van Nuys.
Where'd you get initiated at?
Devonshire Downs,
Thank you.
which is at the north end of Cal State Northridge.
Yeah.
And similar to Bev here, I was a resident out here. I had lived in, I was living in Mission Hills, or it was called Granada Hills, that part at that time. And I was a civil engineer, and I had a job out here doing something or other, and I thought it was a pretty nice community. And so I looked around and I found a house, and I talked to my wife about moving to it, and she says, "Now, just where is that place?" Now, I started courting my wife about 1953, and at that time, the Benelli Stadium was on the big rodeo circuit, the main one, just like Calgary and all of them. It all happened there. And there's a lot, if you see a lot of old westerns about people bucking and this and that, it was done at Benelli Stadium. And in one of our dates, I took her out to Benelli Stadium to a rodeo. So I says,
remember when we went to that rodeo? She says, where? It's that rodeo. Oh, yeah. We're not moving out there. I said, come on. Let's go take a look. Let's go take a look. So she came out, and we had Dylan Beck's, and then there was a little mom and pops over there close to White's Canyon. I think we had one doctor in this area by the name of Campos. The reason I remember the last name is his nephew is a member of this lodge, an associate member. He belongs to the, and we had one high school in the whole place. The kids in our neighborhood went to Hart High School. They opened up Canyon, and my children went to Cedar Creek Elementary School, Sierra Vista Junior High School, and Canyon High School. And I've been associated with the lodge doing various things. My favorite was with the veterans organizations. I was in the United States Army for 7 years. I was an infantryman for 3 years from 1946 to 49, and I was in the Corps Engineers from 49 to 53. And I suddenly thought I might do something else, so I decided to leave, and I went to a place called Valley Junior College. I'd been out of high school 7+ years, and so I had to get some brushing up. And that's where I met a very nice young lady, which a lot of you have met, and she was a student there, an immigrant, fairly new to the country. She was born in Shanghai, China, and the international settlement, and because her family backed the nationalists, they had to leave when the communists came in, and they came here. And that's how she got here. And there's one of our old time, Mary White wants to ask a question too.
Could you bring the mic closer up to your mouth?
I sure will. And I'm going to interrupt myself to say something about this lady. We were in the Little League for years together, and she and her husband were very active in Canyon Country Little League. And I was a manager of a few teams, and if you become a manager of a team, your wife becomes a scorekeeper. You don't know that, she doesn't know that, but you do. After I agreed to it, I got the team, and I said, well, now you've got to get your wife up to speed on keeping score. Oh. So I went home and broke that news, and Mary White and Walt White were running the scorekeeping school. And my wife's a pretty smart gal. She caught up on that scorekeeping, and she loved it. And she is responsible for my wife becoming a baseball fanatic. She still yells. She still yells at the damn television and manages the teams like she tried to manage mine. Sorry. But there was an awful lot of good things that happened. Again, I have to rely on Tripp, Buzz, and he's not here. But I think we started with almost 300. And I got a letter, just like you did.
You had to be a member of 150 to start the lodge.
And so I decided that since I was way up here, I might as well join, and I was there at the beginning of the meetings. And I think the officers got all the low numbers. And then after that, they did it alphabetically. So Williams, I'm 282. We had 300. We had 300. Buzz is about 10 less than me. It was done fairly alphabetically.
I was 44.
Oh, number 44, yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of A's and B's in that, wasn't there? But that's about all I can say about my experiences. Yes.
You're number 282, yes. Buzz Tripp is 268.
Okay.
Bob Gill's 3, of course. Bruce is 296.
Wow.
Nate is 44. So we got our numbers right here. Yep.
Well, it was alphabetical order, I think.
Yeah, sort of
Well,
like.
the B's, that's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was B.
I would like to mention another thing that Bruce had brought up. I was, since my wife and I were products of the junior college system, which it was called in those days, we were very pleased when they introduced the idea of having a community college. And we helped organize in our neighborhood to get as many people to vote for it as possible, because we met there, but it was also, I found that we had excellent instructors. She transferred to UCLA and she went to UCLA the first 2 years we were married. She was a little bit behind me. I transferred to USC. So
We'll forgive you.
we are a mixed marriage, and it works. I don't think I can add more to it. I think our hostess here might have some questions, and maybe Chuck. Although I think you ought to interview Chuck about a few things, too.
Yeah, but what he says we can't really print, you know. Okay. Bob, did you want the mic?
Do any of you guys remember the gilding? Does anybody remember the 5-year-old gilding paint that was given to the lodge to raise money? Okay. We were given a 5-year-old gilding paint, just a beautiful, beautiful horse. We had it out here in the back. So Simi Valley Lodge said that they would go in with us and they would sell raffle tickets on this horse too. Well, anyway, one night after lodge meeting, quite a few guys had this, and I'll tell you that there wasn't that many horsemen in the lodge. Well, they all went out there and they tried to ride this horse. Well, a guy by the name of Jenkins and myself, we knew how to ride a horse and ride it bareback. So we had ridden it first and come back. Then the guy started going out there, and the next thing you know, I mean, there was guys thrown this way, that way. Pop Baker, do you remember Pop Baker?
Oh.
Pop Baker was standing out there, and Pop says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He says, I'm going to write a letter to the Signal, and I'm going to tell them about our rodeo that we had at the Elks Lodge. When he mentioned rodeo, I thought about that.
You know, Pop Baker's dream was when he was 100 years old, that he would be in the Frontier Day Parade, and he was the, what do you call it? The
Grand Marshal.
Grand Marshal. And he rode in the 100th, he was on his 100th birthday, he was in the parade.
Our lodge was very, very instrumental in the Frontiers Parade and everything that went on with the Frontiers Day. We were the ones that was behind that and really made it happen. Yeah.
Wasn't Baker Canyon named after, wasn't that his spot?
Jim, what was that question you had?
I believe there's a canyon out here called Baker Canyon, and that was his,
Named after Pop.
Named
was
after
named
him.
after Pop. Yeah,
No,
okay, he lived
no,
up in there.
no, it's not.
Was it?
No, it's not. That's right by the veterans up here you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's where we have our horses, but no, it was not. That's a private road.
But what, was it named after Pop?
No, it was
Baker?
not named after Pop.
Okay.
There was a canyon, the whole canyon.
Yeah.
It was called, it's still
Okay, well,
called
I'm just saying the one up here by the VFW,
Yeah.
that's called
Baker's
Baker Canyon Road, but that was not named after Pop.
Oh, okay.
But it's Baker.
Pardon?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do now at this point is see if there's any remaining questions right now, burning desire questions that we need to ask. And then I'm gonna with the agreement of you gentlemen, I'd like to offer that people could have their picture taken with you sitting here, because we've got kind of a little bit of history going on. Is that okay if we do that? Pat your hair, right, like that. Okay, Chuck, what is it?
I got a few questions.
Yes, sir.
First of all, when we bought this place, it was this right here. And then we added the lounge out there, and Bob, you said the 70s. Can anybody be more significant?
I went through my stuff there at the house, and the only thing I got left at the house now is The night that we were all initiated as the new officers, that was in November the 17th or whatever, yeah. Yeah. And that was in 67.
Do you have any idea when we added the,
And I looked to see, and
anybody else have any idea? Yeah,
I worked out here in
okay.
building for the area, and they opened that up. They opened that up in, I don't know what year it was, but anyway, when we came to the lodge, this was the only lodge.
I understand. I'm just trying, what I want to do is trying to, my next article, I want to try to say, tell us about, we bought this first, then we did this lounge, and we updated that, then we updated this and that. And I just want to know if anybody of you folks would know, because I know I'm an old fart, but any of you would know when they built that lounge out there, what year, or each, the Exalted Ruler? By any chance, Bob?
Well, I remember building out there, but I worked out there
Have
in,
any idea what year it was?
we bought this lodge in, what year we bought?
1969.
69.
Right.
So it was probably 70,
1970?
about 1970.
Okay, if it's 1970, I can look the Exalted Ruler up, and that way I'll know.
Yeah, 1970.
Okay.
that's what I thought too.
Wow, you threw me for a looper because I had more questions. Can you tell me between 1970 and 1979, because we have no minutes, what kind of briefly what happened in the lodge? We have no idea what happened. I mean, we understand we installed the lodge out there, but can you tell me anything that happened?
Yeah, anything that strikes you.
Anything that you think that would be significant to the lodge?
Well, now, here's the thing. It was, when they were building the lodge and everything, they got the gambling in here.
Well, we knew
They
that.
got the gambling in here, the slot machines.
Yeah, we all know that. I was there when that happened. Go on now. Just, I'll ask you a question.
How are we making so much money, you know, got the gambling machines?
When did Frontier Days start here? Does anybody remember that?
The what?
When did Frontier Days start here? Frontier Days was started here. Can you tell me that? Yeah, Jim.
Ask Kelvin, he was in charge of it many, many times. Kelvin knows when that started. He was, on the building, I remember that we are getting, and I still think we are, maybe 4 or 5 different electric bills because we put together a piece at a time and we had to get a new.
We are getting 3 electric bills, yes, sir, every month, 3 electric bills.
You're doing better. It used to be 5.
Oh,
Consolidated. Progress.
I just use that for an example, but was there anything else that was significant that you can tell me between the 1970s?
Well, the first lodge meeting was when they was in the old courthouse.
Yes.
Right,
Up there, the old
I
courthouse.
realize that.
upstairs.
Upstairs, the
You gotta
Newhall.
remember that.
Yeah. But anything else in the 70s that was significant that would kind of be worth writing about?
Thank you, Dave. You know what I'd like to do now? We're getting these gentlemen getting their thinking caps going, and all of a sudden then we throw way back to the 70s. You know what? Here's what I'd like to suggest. I'd like to go ahead and do some photographs and stuff, or photos and stuff like that. But I'd like to suggest, and if it would depend really on you gentlemen, how about a follow-up meeting on the second Tuesday in June, which would be June 13th. Taco Tuesday, we get something to eat, we come in here and we talk. We can work out the microphone thing a little bit better, maybe do the seating now that we've learned some stuff, and see what we come up with at that point. Now, yes, I'm going to pin you to the wall right this minute, and you especially, Bob Tallent. Are you guys available on Tuesday? Yes, you know why, too. Yes, sir.
Take it up with
Okay, well, Doris is my friend, so I will. All right. Then we know Jim is going to be here. Bob, you better be. Bruce, what does Gloria say? Gloria says okay. All right. Now, see, we're working here. Nate, do you think you can work out with Shirley? Me?
I'm a babysitter now.
I understand. I remember that, dear. Yes. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, you're going to hold off for November, aren't you then? Okay. November 18th is your next date. Okay. And then Bob, Gill, are you good for the June 13th?
Well, if I'm not doing a movie or something like this.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Okay, now. Yes, sir. Chuck.
I want two of them, remember, give me stories of the 70s.
Yeah.
That's what I want, stories of the 70s.
So we'll go back to the 70s at that next meeting.
I
Okay.
have a suggestion.
Yes.
Go interview Buzz.
You know what? That's a good point, Jim, and you've made that.
He's not well enough to come,
Yeah.
but he remembered everything that happened around here, at least when we were working together in the bingo, he would come up with all kinds of stories.
I think that's a good suggestion, and we'll see what we can do to follow up on that.